A bullied girl, always overlooked and mocked, fed a crippled beggar every day, offering him what little food she had. If only she knew the secret he was hiding, one that could change everything. A secret so powerful, it could either save her or destroy her. Sit back and prepare for a story full of twists as we unravel the shocking truth behind their encounters. Isioma was just 18, yet still in JSS 3, a towering figure among classmates much younger than her. Her presence stood out in every classroom photograph, not because she sought attention, but because life had delayed her steps. Despite the whispers, the teasing, and the constant bullying about her age and size, she remained brilliant, the kind of girl who answered questions others were too scared to raise their hands for. Teachers admired her intellect, but students mocked what they didn't understand. Behind her calm eyes was a mind that never stopped working, even when her body was drained. Every afternoon, as the final bell rang and other students scattered toward homes and snacks, Isioma's day was only beginning. She hurried to the roadside market, arms loaded with palm fruit assigned to her by her stepmother. There was no rest, no pause. She had to sell every last one before returning, or dinner would be a privilege denied. Hunger had taught her discipline, but not bitterness. Even with sweat clinging to her brow and her legs trembling from exhaustion, she greeted customers politely, held no grudges, and kept her spirit intact. She didn't complain. She endured, because in her heart, she knew life had more for her than the corners she was being pushed into. Isioma had a quiet way of helping others, offering little services here and there, fetching water for the old, helping women carry goods from the market, watching over a neighbor's stall without ever asking for a coin. She never demanded payment, only smiled and went her way, content with the small thank yous or occasional tips. One day, her neighbor, Mama Tunde, pulled her aside and said sharply, "You keep doing things for free, but that's not how the world works. You need to start collecting money, Isioma." The girl simply looked down and replied gently, "But life isn't always about money, Ma. Sometimes the peace you get from doing good is worth more than anything they can put in your hand." At first, Mama Tunde scoffed at her words, shaking her head at what she thought was naivety. But over time, watching how Isioma's kindness drew people in, how her genuine heart earned her more than money ever could, Mama Tunde began to see that maybe, just maybe, the poor girl understood something the rest of them had forgotten. Isioma had just come from selling palm fruit that evening, her uniform still clinging to her damp skin from the rain that had fallen earlier. Tired and sticky with sweat, she found a quiet spot by the roadside to sit and rest, her basket now nearly empty. That was when she saw him, Papa Jasco, the crippled beggar everyone mocked. His wheelchair wobbled as he struggled to push himself along the muddy path, its wheels bent and rusted, barely holding together. Some traders hissed and shooed him away, calling him bad luck, while children pointed and laughed without mercy. But Isioma didn't laugh. She didn't chase him. She just watched. He looked different that day, quieter, wearier. The spark that usually lit up his face, despite his condition, was gone. He stopped near a gutter, holding his stomach. "I haven't eaten in 2 days," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Isioma knew that hunger. She had gone to bed on an empty stomach too many nights to count. She looked into her small nylon bag. The only thing inside was the money she had made from her sales and a few coins from kind customers. She had been saving every bit to buy books for her junior WAEC, but in that moment, her heart made the decision her mind didn't have the strength to argue with. She stood, walked over, and used the last of her money to buy food, not for herself, but for him. As he took the plate from her hands, a quiet joy returned to his face, and he smiled in a way that made her forget her own hunger. He ate with a grateful hunger, spoon by spoon, like someone remembering how to be human again. Watching him, Isioma didn't regret a thing. She understood that sometimes the right thing isn't the easiest or the smartest. It's simply the kindest. People often stopped and stared, puzzled by Isioma's kindness toward the crippled beggar. Some even asked her, "Why do you always bother with that man? He's not your responsibility." She would simply shake her head, saying nothing, because she knew they wouldn't understand, not until life pushed them into shoes with holes and no one to lean on. Papa Jasco, as he was called, never begged loudly. He never raised his voice or stretched out his hands. He just sat quietly in his broken wheelchair near the market, his head bowed low, his eyes distant. But the moment he spotted Isioma walking toward him, a flicker of life would return to his face. He looked forward to her like a child waits for a familiar friend. Whether it was the leftovers from her lunch or a small meal she had managed to buy and wrap for him with care, it meant everything to him. On days when she didn't come to the market, he went without food, staring at the road as if hoping she might still appear. Isioma hadn't been to the market for nearly a week. Trouble at home with her stepmother had kept her away. There were chores to fix, tensions to settle, and silence to endure. Isioma's kindness came at a heavy price. Days no one saw. Her stepmother, bitter and cold, would beat her with whatever she could grab, slippers, broom, even her bare hands, calling her names that stung worse than the bruises. "Thief!" she would scream. "So you're now stealing my food to feed that useless, wretched cripple?" Each word cut deep. Sometimes after a long day of school and market, Isioma would come home to find her own plate of food thrown out, her room locked. She would curl up on the bare floor outside, stomach growling, tears soaking the sleeves of her faded uniform. Many nights she cried herself to sleep under the moonlight, questioning why doing good felt so painful. The world seemed blind to her efforts. She gave her all, her food, her time, her care, and still, all she got in return was punishment, hunger, and shame. There were moments she sat alone, hugging her knees, wondering if her life had any meaning. Was it worth it? She would ask herself. Does kindness even matter? She was tired of always choosing love and getting hurt for it. She almost gave up, almost let the darkness swallow her. She was tired of being good, tired of giving and only receiving pain. The bruises on her arms faded, but the ones on her heart stayed. Her stepmother's voice still echoed in her ears, calling her a fool, a disgrace, a beggar's helper. Nights on an empty stomach, tears soaking into her pillow, moments she thought of running far away, never coming back, all because she chose to care. And just when she thought the world had turned its back on her completely, just when her heart was on the edge of breaking for good, something happened. But the first chance she got, she hurried back, not to sell, but to search for him. She found Papa Jasco in his usual corner, but something was different. There was still that quiet, peaceful aura about him, but his condition had worsened. One of his legs was crudely wrapped in a piece of torn cloth. He'd been hit by a truck while trying to cross the road days earlier, and there had been no one to help. The sight made Isioma's heart tighten. She had come empty-handed, but managed to get a small plate of food from a friend in the market and rushed it over to him. He looked at the food as if it were gold. "You always look out for me," he whispered, his voice trembling as he tried to hold back tears. "It's been long since I tasted anything warm." That quiet gratitude in his voice nearly broke her. As she placed the plate beside him, his eyes glistened. As Isioma watched Papa Jasco eat slowly, savoring each bite like it was his first real meal in days, a sleek black car rolled to a stop just a few feet from where they sat. The tinted window on the passenger side slid down, and inside, two men dressed in black suits and dark sunglasses stared directly at Papa Jasco. One of them pointed discreetly in his direction, murmuring something to the other. Papa Jasco, lost in his food, didn't notice. But Isioma did. Her eyes narrowed with concern. There was something unsettling about the way they observed him, like they recognized him from somewhere. Before she could approach or ask anything, the window slid back up, and the car drove away without a word. The next day, after managing to sell a few palm fruits, she wrapped up a little food for Papa Jasco, as she always did. But when she reached the spot where he always sat, day after day, rain or shine, there was no sign of him. His usual corner was empty, no bent wheelchair, no folded arms, no quiet smile. Her chest tightened as she looked up and down the familiar stretch of the market road. Papa Jasco didn't just pass through the market. He lived there. He was always there. But now, he was gone. Isioma went around asking anyone who might have seen him. The woman selling vegetables nearby shrugged and said he'd probably gone off to another street to beg, that people like him didn't stay in one place forever. A few others echoed the same thing. Maybe he moved. Maybe he got tired of sitting in the same spot every day. But Isioma wasn't convinced. Deep inside, a quiet worry gnawed at her. She kept thinking about those strange men in black, the way they pointed at Papa Jasco, the way they didn't speak, just stared. Fear crept in, but she didn't know how to explain it to anyone without sounding mad. She carried that fear with her, even to school. Each morning on her way, she scanned the roadside, hoping to catch sight of his worn-out wheelchair, his hunched shoulders, anything at all. But the space where he used to sit remained empty, and the silence of it haunted her. Her heart felt heavier with each passing day, not knowing if he had simply moved on, or if something worse had happened. That night, Isioma sat alone in her dim little room. Her thoughts spiraled. Maybe if she had checked on him sooner, maybe if she had warned someone about those men in the car. Guilt pressed heavily on her chest. She got up, opened the narrow window, and stared into the stillness outside. The street was quiet, shadows dancing under the faint glow of a flickering bulb. A chill drifted into the room, but the cold inside her heart felt worse. Her eyes stung with tears she couldn't hold back. It wasn't just that Papa Jasco hadn't shown up. It was the way everything felt out of place, like something was broken and couldn't be fixed. She lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept racing, replaying every detail from that last encounter. In her gut, she didn't just feel worried, she felt fear. Real, sharp fear. Something wasn't right. Something had gone terribly wrong. Isioma had just returned from the market after selling the last of her palm fruit. She was just resting when the man came, dressed in black on black clothes. She recognized him immediately. It was one of the men who had pointed at Papa Jasco that day. He didn't say much. He simply walked up to her and handed her a brown envelope. Her hands shook slightly as she collected it. She opened the envelope and read the note inside. Her heart pounded harder with each word. She was very scared. Were they here to take her too? The message asked her to come to a place, Victory Lodge, by 5:30 p.m., and to tell no one. She had never been to a lodge before. Her legs felt weak, her chest heavy. But something inside her was curious. Something told her she had to go. That evening, by 5 p.m., she quietly sneaked out of the house, the paper folded tightly in her pocket, fear and questions dancing in her mind. Before leaving that evening, Isioma quietly pulled her neighbor's teenage daughter aside and whispered everything about the man, the envelope, the meeting place. "If I don't come back tonight," she said nervously, "please tell someone." It was her way of protecting herself, just in case. As the tricycle took her through the noisy streets of Lagos, she clutched the brown envelope tightly, her thoughts spinning. When they arrived at Victory Lodge, the building looked more like a place for rich people. Shiny walls, tall glass windows, and a massive door that gleamed under the setting sun. Her sandals tapped nervously on the pavement as she approached the gate. One of the guards in sunglasses stepped forward, took the paper she showed him, glanced at it, and said with a polite smile, "Yes, someone's expecting you." A man in a dark suit appeared almost instantly and motioned her to follow without saying much. Her legs felt heavy, her palms sweaty. Inside, the air was cool and silent, and as she was led down a long hallway, the silence wrapped around her like a warning. Then, as the tall wooden door opened, Isioma froze. Inside the room were several young people, boys and girls, sitting quietly, their faces tense, confused, some afraid, just like her. Her eyes darted across the room, and then she saw him, the same man who had handed her the envelope at the market. He stood in a corner, watching them all without saying a word. A chill ran through her spine. What is this place? She thought. Why are we all here? Are we in danger? Her breath caught in her throat. The questions came faster than the answers, and for a moment, the fear of the unknown nearly knocked her off her feet. Suddenly, without warning, a soft humming sound filled the room, and a screen lit up on the wall like a projector had just been turned on. Everyone turned toward it, confused and tense. The lights dimmed slightly, and then images began to play. It was footage, clear, close, and real, of each person in that room. Scenes of ordinary days. Some were shown ignoring others in need, walking past beggars without a glance, mocking the weak, or acting selfishly when no one was watching. Others, like Isioma, appeared offering small acts of kindness. And there she was, on screen, bending over Papa Jasco, handing him food with a smile, wrapping up leftovers to make sure he didn't go hungry. Her chest tightened, her breath hitched. She hadn't seen him in so long, and now she was seeing herself through someone else's eyes. But how? How had they been recorded? Whispers filled the room as guilt gripped some of the others. A few bowed their heads, their shame written across their faces. Those who had treated others without care or compassion couldn't bear to watch. Just then, the doors at the far end of the room opened, and in came a man in an elegant white outfit with deep blue embroidery, seated in a state-of-the-art wheelchair. His posture was proud, his expression calm. He looked familiar, painfully familiar. The resemblance to Papa Jasco was undeniable, yet everything about him now radiated authority and wealth. Gasps filled the room. He moved forward, and as he reached the center, he turned to face them. "My name," he said, voice strong and clear, "is Chief Charles, not Papa Jasco." The room fell silent, mouths opened in disbelief. A few people glanced at one another, completely stunned. Chief Charles? A billionaire? Isioma's head spun. It didn't make sense. How could this man who once sat begging quietly in a battered chair now stand before them as someone so powerful? The answer, they were beginning to understand, wasn't about money. It was about something far deeper. Chief Charles looked around the room, his eyes calm but heavy with meaning. "Every year," he began, "I do this. I go out disguised as someone society often ignores, just to watch. To see people for who they truly are when there are no cameras, no applause, no rewards." His voice echoed with quiet authority. "Many of you sitting here showed moments of kindness, yes. A few of you gave me a little food or a smile. But some of you treated others with cruelty. You were kind only when it suited you, only when others were watching. Kindness, real kindness, isn't about moods or convenience. It shouldn't be reserved for the few or expressed only when it feels easy." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Some of you helped me because I looked weak and helpless, not because you saw me as a person. But only one of you truly saw me, not as a beggar, not as a burden, but as a human being. She gave not because she had plenty, but because her heart couldn't do otherwise." He turned toward Isioma. "That person is you, Isioma," he said, his voice softening. "You, a schoolgirl with nothing to your name but heart and humility. You treated me the same way you treated everyone, with gentleness and dignity, even when no one noticed, even when you had your own struggles to carry." Tears were now flowing freely down Isioma's cheeks. She could barely lift her eyes. The room was still. No one spoke. People like you, Chief Charles continued, deserve a second chance, a future filled with all the things life tried to deny you: safety, opportunity, abundance. Then, without warning, he placed his hands on the arms of the wheelchair and began to rise. Gasps filled the room as he slowly stood to his full height. His legs were strong, his posture was firm. "I could walk all along," he said gently, "but I needed to know. Would anyone care when I seemed broken? Would anyone give without expecting something back?" As he looked around, he saw their faces, some filled with regret, some with shame, and one, Isioma's, flooded with emotion, but pure. Chief Charles turned to Isioma with a warm smile. "There's more," he said gently. "Your heart deserves not just a moment of reward, but a future that reflects it." He nodded to one of the men in black, who immediately stepped forward and handed him a sleek brown folder. Chief Charles opened it and held it out toward Isioma. "Inside this file," he said, "are documents for your full scholarship to study abroad. Everything covered until you graduate. Tuition, housing, books, even travel." Isioma's hands trembled as she took it, flipping through the papers in disbelief. "And that's not all," he continued. "You'll have your own furnished apartment until your graduation day. A position already awaits you in one of my companies. And a house, yours, fully paid for." Tears streamed down Isioma's cheeks. Her knees buckled as she dropped to the polished floor, hands covering her face as sobs escaped her lips. "I didn't do any of it for reward," she cried. I just cared." Chief Charles knelt beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And that is why love came back to you, carrying more than you ever imagined." Applause erupted across the room. Some clapped with joy, a few with envy hiding in their eyes. But none could deny that she had earned this moment. Not with money, but with heart. Back home, her stepmother stood in the living room of the beautiful apartment Isioma now owned. The silence was thick with guilt and reflection. She had once sent Isioma out to sell in worn slippers, with no belief she would ever become more. Now she lived under the roof of the same girl she had belittled, her shame a quiet reminder of how far kindness could carry someone. But Isioma never held bitterness. Despite all she now had, wealth, respect, and a bright future, she remained grounded. She gave freely, led with grace, and always remembered where her journey began. Every 6 months, like clockwork, Isioma organized massive outreach programs across the city, feeding the hungry, paying school fees for orphans, supplying clothes and medicine to shelters, and building wells in communities with no clean water. Her charity had grown into a powerful force of hope, and she made sure the help reached not just the poor, but the forgotten. Crowds would gather wherever her team went, under flyovers, at crowded bus stops, near rundown schools, faces lighting up with joy and relief as food and care were handed out. One day, during one of these visits, as she handed a warm plate to a barefoot child, the little boy looked up at her and asked, "Auntie, why do you give so much to people you don't even know?" Isioma knelt beside him, brushing his dusty cheek gently. "Because once, someone gave me everything. When I had nothing, I promised I'd pass it on." Just behind the boy, a small girl tugged her arm and said with a big smile, "When I grow up, I want to be like you." Isioma laughed softly and hugged her. "You'll be more than me," she said, her eyes glistening, "because love only grows when we share it." As she stood up and looked at the long line of grateful faces, Isioma felt no pride, only peace. Her life had risen from the dust of hardship, but her heart remained rooted in the very soil that shaped her. True kindness has no price tag. It's the seed that grows silently, but when it blooms, it changes lives beyond imagination. Isioma didn't have riches, connections, or status. What she had was a heart that saw people, not their flaws. She gave without expecting, and in return, life gave her more than she ever dreamed of. This story reminds us that even the smallest act of compassion can become the turning point in someone's destiny, including your own. What about you? What did this story stir in your heart? Did it remind you of someone you once helped, or someone who once helped you? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to read them. And don't forget, an even more touching story is coming your way very soon. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it the moment it drops. If this story touched you, please like and share it with someone you care about. You never know who needs to hear this message today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in good stories. See you in the next one.